Hey everybody, it's My Nerdy Universe. Welcome to the episode about Spectacular Spider-Man. Now, this was my first time watching the show, so I can't wait to bring you guys my summaries of each episode. They're going to be very brief. I'm only going to go over 3 to 4 points, and also my quip and villain look point system, which is out of 10 for each thing. So let's get right into it. So we have Josh Keaton as Spider-Man, which he's a great voice actor. Let me just put it you that way. He voices Spider-Man in this show. He voices, I think, Black Spider in the Young Justice show, which is like a Spider-Man clone, which I'm so glad they did that. But I think they have made a great choice for this character, and he loves it so much. I follow him on TikTok and Instagram, and you really can see the love that he has for the character. And he wishes that the original vision for the show was to have 5 seasons and for Peter to go to college and grow as a character and get with MJ. And that just didn't happen. Disney ended up canceling the show, which is very sad because, like I'm about to show you guys, the show had amazing potential and shouldn't have gotten canceled. But let me get right into season 1, episode 1, Survival of the Fittest. So we get an opening web slinging scene, which is amazing, and just the art and the way the camera works, which I guess you could say there's camera work, but at the same time it's really just animation. It's just amazing, and how they show the scenery and the art is just 10 out of 10. You get the theme song introduction because every cartoon does have a theme song, but this one goes unexpectedly so hard. Like, it is amazing. In my opinion, it is like a 10 out of 10. You guys should definitely go check it out on YouTube. It is definitely worth the time that you will end up spending just listening to it over and over again. So we find out that Peter got his powers over the summer, or either over the summer or before the summer. And we get introductions to a lot of characters, just brief ones. We get introductions to Adrian Toomes, Norman Osborn, Otto Octavius, the Enforcers, Hammerhead, Kirk Connors, Eddie Brock, Gwen Stacy, Harry Osborn. And as everybody knows, Adrian Toomes does become the Vulture. He becomes it in this episode, and instead of his regular green that we remember from Final Fantasy 15, we get, I mean, not Final Fantasy, Amazing Fantasy 15. We get a red and black design, which I love 10 times better, in my opinion, because I am a sucker for red and black. So I gave the villain look an 8 out of 10. And then I also gave the quip rating a 7 out of 10 because I think the quips that he has with Norman Osborn in this episode, but also Vulture, is just really good. But it's nothing like Green Goblin in Spider Man, which I will get to. So, 7 out of 10. But I feel like it's a well deserved 7 out of 10. Now, let's go to episode 2 of season 1, which is labeled Interaction. Interactions begins with a bio incident at ESU's lab, and it involves Max Dillon, which we all know is Electro. So we get an introduction to him. We also get an introduction, a really detailed one, to Liz Allen, which in the show is Peter's like kind of first love interest, and also, well, actually, thinking about it, I think, yeah, it's his first love interest in the show, and it does carry for almost all of season 2, which I will get into more detail with. But I feel like he should have stayed with her, for sure, for the rest of the show, and we were kind of robbed of that. Gwen gets kind of jealous with Peter tutoring Liz, and you see a lot of that, which I guess is well deserved, but Peter only sees Gwen as like a best friend, so I don't really know about that. Kurt starts using lizard DNA to get his arm back, even though his amputated arm or kind of stub is replaced with a metal arm. So I don't really know why they kind of have that plot in there. Like maybe he doesn't like the metal arm, maybe he doesn't feel natural, and I get that. But most of the time, the reason that Kurt becomes the lizard or he uses lizard formula to get his arm back is because there's no really real substitute of getting an actual arm. So Peter and Liz's relationship starts to grow, after Liz gets ditched by Peter as Peter goes to face off against Electro. And Liz is like, man, I got ditched by a nerd? I really should wake up and like start paying attention to Peter. So there's a lot of good quips with Peter and Electro, which I thought was really good, but not 7 out of 10 worthy, but I did give it a 6 out of 10. Nothing, I think none of my quips went below a 5, just because even when Peter's just bouncing off himself, it just feels so natural, and I love that. I gave the villain look an 8.5 out of 10 because he uses the hazmat suit that he was given to control his electricity as his suit, and you also kind of see the sparkiness to him because of just so how lively the animation is. So we get to go to episode 3 of season 1 called Natural Selection. Peter has no luck with the Spider-Man picks that he's taking for the Bugle to just get some money for MA because MA and Peter in the show are just having some financial struggles. And like in every piece of Spider-Man media that I've seen, they're always, except for the Homecoming movies, because they have Tony Stark. But they've always like kind of dealt with these financial difficulties, and they really focus on that in this show, and it's very nice to kind of see that they don't let the Spider-Man side of him overshadow the Peter Parker side. There's really a kind of, I think in my opinion, like a 60-40 split. Like it's majority Spider-Man, but not so much so that you forget about that Peter Parker slash human side of him, which is nice. So Peter almost gives up his idea as Spider-Man during a water balloon fight between him and Flash because he's like unhumanly dodging these water balloons as Flash is throwing them, but he ends up just taking one for the team and getting hit. And Rand breaks it up. Peter and Eddie find out that Kirk Connors has turned into the Lizard because of that sped up Lizard formula and get started on like a gene cleanser to get him back to normal. So the Lizard is the main villain in this episode. I think his villain look was kind of, looking back on it, a 6 out of 10 because it's just so bland. It's just a lizard in a lab coat. It's classic, but it's nothing special. I think it definitely looks unique looking because of the animation style for sure. I gave the quip rating an 8 out of 10 because even though the lizard isn't really talking, Peter is bouncing off himself like always, so naturally with the lizard fighting him that is just really great. So we get to go to episode 4, the market forces. Betty and Peter, in my opinion, there begins to build some kind of, I don't want to say romance because Betty finds him, cute for trying to invite him to his fall formal, but Betty's also way older than Peter, so it's like it's kind of this like weird like, oh, he's into Betty, but Betty thinks it's just kind of like jokingly cute. So I don't really know why they pushed for that. And May steps in, helps tell Betty like let him down, like you don't have to do this. You shouldn't do it. You're 20 something years old. I think she was early 20s or 22. Yeah, I just found it really weird. Harry starts getting really distant with Peter because Peter's doing more Spider-Man stuff and kind of, it seems like neglecting Harry, which isn't fair to him. We get an introduction to Shocker, which is nice. One of the enforcers becomes Shocker in this show, which is nice because you're building off and expanding already existing characters. Norman is hired by Hammerhead's boss, which we don't know yet, to create superpowered villains to distract him from Hammerhead's crimes. I give the quip rating 7 out of 10, and I give the villain design a 6.5 out of 10 because it's the classic Shocker design, but the classic Shocker design is kind of bland in my opinion. We get to go to episode 5, Competition. Flint and Alex join the big league of crime and become super villains. You have Flint becoming Sandman, and you have Alex becoming the Rhino. Yeah, they go with Alex. They don't go with Alexei, which is kind of weird. I don't hate it, but still weird. Aunt May still pushes MJ to be Peter's date for the fall formal. Peter and Harry try out for the football team, and Harry makes it. Otto shows off his arms for the first time, and he's not Doc Ock yet. but he just uses the arms for lab work in the supervillain lab. Spider-Man runs out of webs during his Sandman fight because he finds out that Sandman, essentially, the webs just go right through him, so none of them matter. We get introduced to Hobby Brown in this episode, which I think was a cool Easter egg because he's not a spider person in this universe. At least that's not shown that at all in season 1 or season 2. So I felt like it was kind of just a Spider Punk Easter egg or even a Prowler Easter egg. If you guys remember that Hobby or Hobie Brown was the Prowler, the original Prowler in the 1994 animated series. Harry becomes more distant with not only Peter but now Gwen. I gave the quip rating a 6 out of 10. I gave the villain rating 5 out of 10 because it's Sandman. It's literally just a green shirt, pants, and then he becomes sand. It's pretty bland. I rhymed there, which is great. So we go to the Invisible Hand, which is episode 6 of season 1, and Rhino is officially introduced and created in this episode. Betty talks to Aunt May again about the dance, and she's like, alright, fine, I'll let him down easy. They don't go to the dance together. J. Jonah Jameson helps Peter escape the Rhino, and I felt like that was a nod to how J. Jonah Jameson, when Green Goblin's looking for Peter, he goes, yeah, he just sends him to the mail like we don't know who he is. So that was pretty nice. Tombstone, which is Hammerhead's boss, is introduced in this episode. Funny scene in this was Spider-Man gets like literally slapped, like backhand slapped by Tombstone for standing up to him, and there's a crime war starting between Green Goblin and Tombstone, which I thought was really cool. Lincoln has cops on the payroll. They're like his new form of security. I thought it was like the cops didn't trust Spider-Man yet, and that's why they took Tombstone's side, but I now know that Tombstone just had cops on his payroll. We meet MJ for the first time, which was very nice. I gave the villain rating a 6 out of 10, and I gave the quip rating a 4 out of 10 because there wasn't a lot of quips. But I also thought, yeah, Rhino's design is bland, but it's like, what more can you do with a Rhino? You know what I mean? Like, what more can you do with a Rhino design? So that brings us to season 1, episode 7, Catalyst. We get an official Green Goblin intro, and then we get Spider-Man calling him the Emerald Elf. Now, there's a universe, I don't know what universe is called, but there's a universe where Peter dies and Uncle Ben becomes Spider-Man, and his Green Goblin's called the Emerald Elf. So I thought that was a pretty good kind of comic nod. I don't know if they meant to do that on purpose, but I thought that was amazing. And you really can't catch it unless you like know that little tidbit. Osborn ditches his real friends to become like friends with the whole football team because now he's part of the football team. We meet JJ's son, who is John Jameson. After losing his glory, Harry drinks the Goblin Serum and becomes the Green Goblin. MJ's kind of one of those people that you think Peter's gonna be with, like his first like girlfriend, but she's just friends with Peter, and that's why she wanted to date with him because she starts dancing with like other guys like Rand, and I think in the next episode, her and Flash are teased to be a thing. So that was kind of cool. Another thing I loved was Peter runs out of webs when fighting the Goblin, but he has backups. He's learning because he ran out of webs with Sandman, but he learns not to do that anymore. So now he has backup webs when he's fighting the Goblin. So you really see him adapting, and it's it's a small little bit that they do. Just I think four episodes down the line, like he's just learning like that. That's so neat. I gave the quip rating a 10 out of 10. And I think most of my quip ratings when it's involving the Green Goblin and Spider-Man are a 10 out of 10 because Goblin is also quipping what Spider-Man's dishing out. So you really get this just like bashing back and forth, and it's amazing. I gave the villain design rating 9.5 out of 10 because, come on, it's Green Goblin. You can't hate that. So I loved it. So episode 8, Reaction. Liz and Peter start to show that they have a thing for each other. Harry is addicted to the green. that he's taking, and the Green Goblin creates Doc Ock, which is kind of neat because Doc Ock created Sandman and Rhino, but Green Goblin creates Doc Ock. Spider-Man not only saves Liz, Gwen, and MJ, but he also defeats Doc Ock. Like, how do you do that? That's like amazing. Like, he multitasks no matter what. He uses his spider signal to distract Doc Ock and defeat him by taking out his battery, which I thought was amazing, especially because this was his first time going against Doc Ock, and just learning on your feet and using something that was so simple to your advantage is top-notch level thinking. I gave the quip rating an 8 out of 10 because I loved their banter between each other, Doc Ock and Spider-Man. It was very intellectually pleasing to me. I gave the villain rating a 7.5 because, I love the Doc Ock arms, but Doc Ock also isn't like my favorite villain. I also feel like Alfred Molina is like my Doc Ock, and like I will always 100% think his design is superior to anything I will ever see on screen. Episode 9 is called The Uncertainty Principle. It's a Halloween episode, and this is when JJ's son gets stuck in space, and they're all worried that he's not gonna make it, but he does make it, and it's great. Green Goblin goes after Hammerhead, and that kind of starts the whole crime war between Tombstone and Green Goblin. Like, it really perpetuates that forward. Green Goblin sets up a trap to Tombstone and Spider-Man with Hammerhead as the bait because he told Tombstone that Hammerhead had a disk drive that had all your dirty secrets on it, but Hammerhead really didn't have it. Black Cat, if you guys do watch the episode, Black Cat appears, I kid you not, for like a few seconds and then is gone. It's one of those things that if you don't see it, you'll miss it. And it's the legit Black Cat, and I think she literally was robbing a bank, and Spider-Man didn't know who she was, and we just missed it. Because here's the thing, I thought maybe it's a costume. She's not a known thief. At least I don't think she is in this universe, because then Spider-Man would know about her. Spider-Man follows Green Goblin after a big fight with them at a factory after the trap back to Harry and Norman's home. And when Green Goblin takes off a mask, we find out it's Harry. And we're all shocked. And then we get a tease for the Venom symbiote when JJ's son gets back. It's on the bottom of his ship. So I gave the quip rating an 8 out of 10 and the villain rating a 9 out of 10 because it involves the Green Goblin, Tombstone, and Hammerhead. Because I love Tombstone's design. It's simple, but it's also slimming. Like, he's not built as a big guy. He's just built as a slim wall, because that's what he is. You cannot headbutt this guy. You can't take him head on. And then you get Green Goblin. So the quip rating is always going to be high for that. I love how it is. There wasn't a lot of quipping, so that's why I gave it an 8. But anyways, episode 10, Persona of season 1. The Venom arc starts here. We get a Black Cat intro, and we also get Eddie's hatred for Peter really starting to snowball. We get a Chameleon intro, and then we get Beck/Mysterio introing, because he's not actually Mysterio yet. He's still just Quentin Beck, and the Tinkerer is in this. They help the Chameleon become a fake Spider-Man that starts robbing banks. So that's pretty cool. And the black suit Spider-Man has these amazing quips with the fake Spider-Man that is great. I think I laughed at one. I still give it a 7 out of 10 because that was a highlight quip, but nothing really kind of followed up with that. The black suit design is small. The logo changes, it's very small, but it's so small that I love it. They didn't really fully redesign the suit, but these small changes just make it a whole new suit and a whole new persona, and it's great. We also find out a bigger backstory with Eddie and Peter and why they're so close. They lost their parents in the same plane crash, and that's kind of why they bonded as kids. But Peter had Aunt May, and Eddie had no one. So I think he also puts that as a reason why he's also mad at him. We get also an intro to Captain Stacy, Gwen's dad, and he's officially captain now. I think there's a small intro of him, but he's a detective. So he got a promotion like within like I think 3 episodes, maybe two, because I remember seeing him. I gave the quip rating a 7 out of 10, and I gave the villain rating a 5 out of 10. Season 1, Episode 11 is called Group Therapy. Doc Ock sets up the Sinister Six, which is Sandman, Electro, Doc Ock, Rhino, Vulture, and the Shocker. Now, this is Sinister Six version 1. There's a second version that I will get to later. Eddie starts wearing a jacket that teases him as Venom. He wears a black jacket, just how Peter wears a black shirt when he's wearing the Venom symbiote. Eddie no longer likes Peter for what he has done, even though he said he was going to forgive him. He never does, and it's just this ball and void of hatred just keeps building and building like a black hole, just feeding on everything that Eddie keeps giving him. The Six upgrade their gear to take on Peter after they get defeated once or slightly defeated individually when they were first encountered, so they can't be defeated as a group anymore, and those old weaknesses can never be exploited. Eddie and Peter's dad, we find out another backstory, were scientist partners, so they were around as kids a lot because their dads were friends so much. Now, Morales is name dropped in the show, and I looked it up. Miles Morales wasn't created as a character until 2012, so I don't know if that was a loose name drop or if it was Rio Morales maybe, because it was a woman Morales that Captain Stacey called out to. But I like to think that in this universe, Rio Morales is a cop, and Jefferson Davis is a stay-at-home dad, which would be so cool in my opinion. Peter defeats the Sinister Six asleep as the symbiote is starting to really take over and become like a whole organism inside Peter. I gave the quip rating a 4 out of 10 because Peter doesn't talk a lot, at all towards the last half of the episode, because of course he's asleep, so there's not really a lot of quipping during that final fight. I gave the villain rating a 10 out of 10 because this is the first time we see the Sinister Six get together, so that's definitely worth a 10 out of 10. Episode 12 is called Intervention. The suit's aggression, like the symbiote itself, is starting to take over Peter's mind and make him aggressive towards his friends, his family, because Aunt May had a heart attack as he was defeating the Sinister Six last episode. So when he finds out this and finds out May has been in the hospital without him even knowing, he kind of starts letting that aggression take over because he's now feeling so weak and that he couldn't save his aunt from that. Something out of his control, I mind you. Peter goes over to Tombstone, well, Symbiote Peter goes over to Tombstone to take Tombstone's job offer that he had offered the first time. When I said Tombstone slapped him, that's because he refused his job to pay for the hospital bills. Gwen's feeling for Pete gets stronger, but Pete doesn't see this because, like I said, he's blinded by his aggression. Eddie and Pete become closer to enemies, as, like I said, that hatred black hole kind of keeps just growing and feeding off of Eddie. We get a sentient flashback of Peter's spider bite and origin as the symbiote puts Peter in a cocoon. They kind of get this flashback of Uncle Ben and Uncle Ben trying to help Peter fight the symbiote, and he fights it off, and he brings it back to the lab and tries to destroy it. But when he destroys it, it doesn't actually get destroyed. It bonds with Eddie as Spider-Man swoops away. And now we get Venom. Because, like I said, that hatred that he had, Venom, well, the symbiote feeds off that. And so now Eddie and Venom have a permanent relationship. And if Eddie's without Venom, he feels so alone and so sad and pathetic. I gave the quip rating a 3 out of 10 because this was a more serious episode, so there really wasn't a main villain / someone to quip against. And then I gave the villain rating a 4 to 10 because it was more of like a backstory slash like flashback episode and more of like a symbolic fight than like a hand to hand fight. Which, don't get me wrong, I don't hate. Nature versus nurture is where kind of the Venom arc kind of ends. And Venom takes a job from Tombstone instead of Peter because he has Peter's powers. Gwen and Liz both want to have Peter, but he doesn't know who to decide. Thanksgiving is tomorrow, so this is kind of like a Thanksgiving episode. And Peter has no spider sense to Venom since he spent so much time with him, with the symbiote, that his Spider-Man sense doesn't register him as a threat. That's why Peter doesn't have spider sense against Venom. Peter defeats Venom one more time thanks to his friends and family. As Venom tries to go from Eddie to Peter, he's like, no, you can't. And he bags up the symbiote, and is like, now you're trapped there forever. And he throws that bag into a thing of concrete to bury it alive. And Eddie's like, no, what do I do? I'll never find it again. Peter and Gwen have Thanksgiving together, and then right when Gwen's about to leave with her dad, she goes up to kiss Pete, and they get way closer after that. Peter finally dumps that vial of gene cleanser that he got all the way back in the early season when the lizard was a thing. Because he's like, the city needs Spider-Man and I'm ready to accept that responsibility. We get Venom suiting up for the first time in this episode, but then lose him just as quick. So it's very weird. I'm not going to say it's a one-off because Venom does come back in season 2, but it's still kind of weird. I gave Quip and villain rating both an 8 out of 10 because Venom and Peter do quip with each other a bit, and it's great. I love it. I gave the villain rating because I love Venom's design. It's big. I love his design. It looks very unique to the art style. Definitely worth it. So we get season 2, episode 1, which is called Blueprints. We get a very small Stan Lee cameo in this. Mysterio is introduced officially in this episode. Liz wants Pete's tutoring to get closer to him and get him away from Gwen, seeing how close him and Gwen are. Pete still hasn't made a move on Gwen since the Thanksgiving kiss, which I think is not worth it at all. Mysterio hits Oscorp for tech theft because he's becoming kind of an illusionist tech thief to create bigger and badder illusions. Spider-Man relies on it solely his spider sense to defeat his illusions, which I thought was another good nod. You could say Far From Home nodded to this, but in Far From Home, Mysterio is the main villain. Tom Holland's Spider-Man, by the end of the movie, relies on his Spider-Man sense to defeat Mysterio, so I kind of liked that. We find out Beck is Mysterio, which if you read the comics, you already saw it coming. And there is a new main villain of this season called the Master Planner, which I thought was very cool. I gave the Quip rating an 8 out of 10, and I gave the villain rating 8.5 out of 10. I like Mysterio's look in this. I think it's very unique. There's a lot of different pieces to his costume, and it's great. And, that should be known. I mean, Mysterio is definitely going to put effort into his costume. That's the whole point of the illusion. And then I gave the Quip rating because I like him and Peter's banter during the fights and everything, so that was great. So, season 2, episode 2 is called Destructive Testing. Kraven is introduced. Liz and Gwen both want to get closer to Peter, but Peter still can't decide. And it's like, dude, you have 2 girls after you. I would love that. Are you kidding me? And you can't decide which one? Personally, I would have gone with Liz. He does go with Liz. But at the same time, I see why he was kind of fighting it, because, like, Liz didn't kiss you on Thanksgiving. Gwen did, so you really had that. Peter's conflicted feelings start getting in the way of his crime fighting. And then the Master Planner recruits Kraven. We still don't know who this Master Planner is. For the longest time, I thought it was Tombstone, maybe. Maybe he was trying to recruit his own thing of supervillains. I gave the Quip rating a 7 out of 10. And I gave the villain rating a 6 out of 10 because I don't like Kraven's plane design. I do like the quip rating between Kraven and Spider-Man, like how they're hunting, and he's like, "Oh, you're a hunter. Like, what are you doing in New York?" and stuff like that. So you get season 2, episode 3, reinforcements. It's Christmas time, and then you get a new Sinister Six, which is Beck, Tombstone, Electro, Kraven, Rhino, and Mysterio. That's the new Sinister Six, and the Master Planner assembles this new Sinister Six to take down Peter. Peter still can't decide between Liz and Gwen. I mean, it's been 5 episodes. He still can't decide. It's kind of, at this point, um, ridiculous. The Master Planner helps the Sinister Six escape Peter. I mean, no, it helps escape the cops after Peter takes them down at the Rockefeller Center. So that was pretty cool. How the Master Planner had a plan. So that was great. I think the Quips rating and the villain rating both deserved a 9, mostly because he had a lot of villains to quip off of, and the villain designs, you have them all come together. And like I said, some of those were really high on my list, so I just gave them all a collective 9, which I think was definitely worth it. Season 2, episode 4 is called Sheer Strength. We find out Doc Ock is actually the Master Planner, and Doc Ock can now control tech with his mind because of tech thefts that Mysterio did. Doc Ock kidnaps Gwen Stacy to get Captain Stacy to steal almost like satellite codes so he can control every single piece of technology in the world. Spider-Man doesn't let that happen. He saves Gwen by getting this really dramatic moment as the Master Planner's base is flooding. He holds up this piping and really keeps it above his head and Gwen so she doesn't drown and get hurt just because of sheer strength. He rips his suit, pulling it to the edges. It is amazing. It's a great scene. You guys definitely need to check it out. Then Doc Ock escapes and activates self-destruct while Peter's doing this. Electro is defeated, but Spider-Man goes back to save him and Gwen, and they leave in an escape pod. Liz and Peter have a New Year's kiss, and it looks like there's a thing now between Peter and Liz. I give the quip rating a 7 out of 10, and the villain rating an 8 out of 10. So we get season 2, episode 5, called Growing Pains. Someone in a black Spider-Man suit, smaller than Venom, but bigger than Pete, is attacking cops. And this made me think it wasn't Venom because, like I said, it was smaller than Venom. So I thought maybe Pete got the Spider-Man suit back, but that's not possible. So yeah, there are play-like lines between each kind of scenes, kind of like cutaways, and that confused me for the biggest time. But then I found out that they were actually auditions for a musical. JJ's son is now affected by kind of symbiotic spores that he got from his space mission, and he gets super hero like powers, and he's now named Colonel Jupiter. We find out that the fake Spider-Man, fake Black Spidey, is Venom. Somehow Venom got his suit back by breaking concrete, and we find that out actually very soon. It is very I will get to that because there was a misorder of the episodes on Disney Plus. I mean, you'll find it. So there definitely is going to be some confusion, but I will explain that. Harry and Gwen are dating, and Liz and Peter are now officially dating. JJ's son kind of goes mental after losing his powers through a fight with Spidey. I gave the quip rating a 5 out of 10 because there wasn't really a lot of quipping between Captain Colonel and Spider-Man when they did fight. And then I gave the villain rating a 7 out of 10 because I did like the Colonel Jupiter suit a bit. So that's why I gave it a 7 out of 10. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about the episode confusion is because the episode that's before the episode I just talked about is called First Steps. And on Disney Plus, it's marked as Season 2, Episode 13. The last episode of Season 2, but that's not actually true. It is supposed to be, according to my notes, Season 5, and Growing Pains being, it's not Season 5, episode 5, and then Growing Pains is supposed to be episode 6. Everything's supposed to be moved up in episodes, so I'm just going to go into it now. But we find out that Eddie gets the Venom suit back by kind of playing mind games with Peter and making him think that Venom is back by dressing up as Venom and also just playing these games so Pete can lead him back to the symbiote and make sure it's still in the concrete. But then Eddie just breaks it out. That's why we get Eddie and Venom back in that episode I just talked about with Colonel Jupiter. Now, this is also the episode that Liz and Pete start dating, and this is also the beginning of the new school year. So when Liz and Pete start dating, they're seniors, and that's really cool. We get an introduction to a new love interest for Flash, who her name is, I think it's Shan Shahan? No, it's Shan Shahan. I think I said that right. And then we also get an introduction to Mark Allen, Liz's brother, and he does have a criminal record. We don't know for what, though. Captain Stacy is now teaching at school. It's I think a criminal class, kind of like a policeman's class. Sandman and Peter are fighting the first day of school, which I think is a nice kind of parallel of the first episode where they're fighting the day before school. Sandman is robbing a museum, and we find out that his powers have leveled up like tremendously over the summer, which is great. Peter gets invited to Flash's birthday. We don't know why. I don't know why. But we then find out it's because his mom sent out the invitations and that Peter and Flash used to be best friends like back in elementary school. So that was kind of cool. We get a mention to Frogman, which if you've seen the She-Hulk series, he's in that show, which we never see Frogman, but he's like name dropped in that show. So that's kind of cool. Like I said, we get a tease of Venom being black. So yeah, I gave the quip rating, since it was Spidey and Sandman, a 9 out of 10 because they kind of went back to that from episode 1, so I loved that. And then I gave the villain rating an 8 out of 10 because I'm glad, again, they did that parallel. So that was kind of nice because during that first episode, Sandman didn't even have his powers yet, so that's kind of nice. So let's go to Identity Crisis, which should be episode 7 of season 2. Venom outs Peter's identity to the Daily Bugle, and now he's under fire. MJ has a crush on Mark Allen. Pete and Gwen almost kiss again while he's dating Liz. Venom wants to use the gene cleanser on Pete and then reveal his identity so all his enemies go after him when he has no powers. But that all goes to flop when Venom separates from Brock permanently after Pete uses the gene cleanser on him, and since Brock doesn't have Venom anymore, he gets sent to a mental hospital, like Colonel Jupiter. And also, we find out Electro's at that mental hospital too. The Venom symbiote actually survives the gene cleanser, but is very weakened and goes into a sewer grate. Captain Stacy, in my mind, he shows a lot of hinting that he knows Pete is Spider-Man, but I'm not going to say supports it, but also doesn't disencourage it because Pete's doing a lot of good as Spider-Man. I gave the quip rating a 6 out of 10 because there wasn't a lot of quipping between Brock and Spider-Man. I think, again, it was more of a symbiotic episode and kind of building off Peter's struggles as Pete and not Spider-Man. I gave the villain rating an 8 out of 10 since Venom was back and we hadn't seen him for a while. Accomplices, season 2, episode 8. Black Cat is back and tried to steal from Tombstone. Hobie keeps trying to ask Captain Stacy a question. I think it has to do with something maybe being teased as Prowler. We get a tease to Silver Sable. That gets introduced, and her father is teased, Silver Mane. So that's amazing at an auction. That's originally what Black Cat was trying to steal, was something from an auction. And we find out that what was being auctioned was Rhino armor specs. Rhino and Spider-Man team up to keep those specs out of the hands of Silver Sable, Hammerhead, and another third-party person. After they do that, Rhino turns into a villain again and tries to squash the spider. We find out at the end of the episode that Norman actually stole those plans from Tombstone, and they were fake all along, and he had the real ones. I gave the quip rating a 6 out of 10, and I gave the villain rating a 7 out of 10. Quip rating because there was a lot of villains. You had Hammerhead, Silver Sable, and Rhino, so a lot of quipping to happen with all three of those villains. So I thought that was great. Peter still has feelings for Gwen. We find that out towards the end of the episode. And I gave the villain rating a 7 out of 10 because there's really no uniqueness to the characters. We've already seen Rhino, we've already seen Hammerhead. And Silver Sable, I feel like, had no uniqueness to her. You know, it was good, but it wasn't like mind blowing the costume that she was given in the show. Season 2, Episode 9, Probable Cause, shows that Shocker's old crew, the Enforcers, get new suits. One's called the Ricochet, and the other one's called Ox now. And they're stealing. They got the new suits from the Tinkerer and Tombstone, which are now working together. And they are stealing money to prepare for a war coming from Silvermane. Liz and Gwen do a ride along together, which is plenty full of awkwardness because they're both essentially love interest of Peter, and Gwen knows that Liz is dating Peter, and she has feelings for Peter. So it's very, very mind blowing. Mark Allen and MJ ride together, and it's kind of just a date for them. Spidey gets his butt handed to him at first by the new Enforcers, but starts to counter their moves, not before they stole cop uniforms to break into the Gold Reserve to, again, get money for the war that's coming with Silver Sable. Captain Stacy definitely knows his Peter's Spider-Man at this point, because he's now starting to cover for Peter's kind of oddliness and absentness when it comes to his classmates. Hammerhead sabotages the Enforcers to get back at Tombstone. It was very odd at the same, but again, I don't know. There's a tease at the very end that Harry is using the green again, so Green Goblin might be back. Quip rating I gave 7 out of 10, and villain rating I gave 8.5 out of 10 because we got those new Enforcer teched out crew, and I think all three of them together definitely earned that 8.5 out of 10. Season 2, Episode 10 is Gangland. Silvermane and Tombstone, the war between them start. We get a Valentine's date between Liz, Shauna, Gwen, and their respectable dates, Pete, Flash, and Harry. Hammerhead sets a trap to take over from everybody, Silver Sable's dad, Tombstone, and Doc Ock, their whole territories by pinning them against each other. Pete leaves his date to go take down all three of them by himself, but as he's leaving, he doesn't apologize to his date. He apologizes to Gwen, which I think was not right for him to do. I don't know what he was thinking. When Doc Ock, Tombstone, and Silver Sable try to contact for backup, Hammerhead is jamming their signal. Spidey takes out Silvermane first by taking out the hydraulics in his suit so he can't move. Then Doc Ock with a battery that he just takes out of the suit so he can't move. And then when he gets taken down to the sewers by Tombstone, he's like, "Now I can finish you, Spidey." And Spidey's like, "No, you can't," and defeats Tombstone and then turns him into the cops. And now they know who L. Thompson Lincoln / Tombstone really is. He's not an upstanding citizen. He's a crime boss. But now that all the big people are taken out, instead of it being Hammerhead's territory, Hammerhead's actually working for the Green Goblin. So now he's the big man of crime, and he's also back. So that's what makes me think Harry's using again, because Harry's the Green Goblin. I gave quip ratings a 7.5 out of 10, and I gave villain rating a 9.5 out of 10 because there was a lot of dramatic stuff with the villains, with the meeting, and then the big fight with the three of the main crime bosses against Spidey, so I thought that was great. Season 2, Episode 11 is called Subtext. We get an introduction to Molten Man / Mark Allen after his gambling addiction goes sideways and he ends up owing too much money, and so now he has to become Molten Man for Green Goblin for his debts to be wiped away. Liz and Pete make up after he does that whole Valentine's Day fiasco. Mark Allen doesn't know what to do. He starts to panic. And then he's like, I have to end Spider Man. And his sister is just so sad and betrayed by this. We end up finding out Warren is the new scientist of Norman Osborn's villain creation program. And he's the one that actually injects Mark Allen with the Molten Man nanobots. The reason Mark is really fighting Spidey is for control of the suit, not to wipe his debts, which is what we're originally meant to believe. We find out that Miles Warren takes over the ESU lab from Connors after blackmailing him about the lizard formula. Mark Allen is sent to prison because of the crimes of property damage and also fighting Spidey. I gave the quip rating a 6 out of 10 and the villain rating a 5 out of 10. I didn't like the Molten Man's design. I think he looked like a wrestler or a boxer. And I gave the quip rating a 6 out of 10 because it was again, a more serious episode about addiction than it was more quippy. So we get to the final two episodes. Episode 12, Season 2, called Opening Night. The Vault is a super villain prison that was built by Oscorp. Spidey is put in the prison to test it. Black Cat breaks into it to bust out her dad. We find out her dad was actually the person that murdered Uncle Ben, and that puts Black Cat and Spidey at odds because he's not going to let a person that murdered his uncle let him go. But Black Cat's dad ended up sacrificing himself to put all the villains to sleep in a gas chamber as Spidey and Black Cat escape and put all the villains away. We get an introduction to Green Goblin again as he's fighting the Green Goblin on top of the prison. Black Cat swoops in and saves him, but she says, this doesn't make up for anything. I still hate you for what you did about my dad. I gave the quip rating a 9 out of 10 and the villain rating a 10 out of 10 since Green Goblin was there. I also love Black Cat's design a lot. I gave the quip rating a 9 out of 10 because I think the Green Goblin and Spidey just complement each other. Also, Green Goblin is rhyming this whole episode, which I thought was very cartoony, but also right up against Green Goblin's alley for sure. So I loved that. And then we get the final episode called The Final Curtain. And what I love about episode 12 and 13 was they kind of go hand in hand. Like you get opening night and then final curtain. Like that's pretty cool. Harry relapsed hard to the green, or that's what we're led to believe. But we actually find out that the Green Goblin kidnapped Harry and was keeping a hostage to make everybody think that the Green Goblin was Harry. Gwen and Pete kiss after Harry admits all this news to them. Or no, they almost kiss, but they realize that they have to break off their relationships before they can be together. Harry hears this because he doesn't actually leave, he's just snooping around. Harry destroys his green. Goblin sets off a massive bomb, severely wounding Spider-Man on the Oscorp balcony. Spidey is still trying to figure out who the Goblin is because he knows it's not Harry and he knows it's not Norman because he saw both of them together when that bomb went off. Liz and Pete both break up before the whole big fight, and that's why we get this whole mixed emotion on why I think Liz and Pete shouldn't have broken up. We find out Norman is the Green Goblin. He framed his son by breaking his leg that night that we found out he was limping. Harry manipulates Gwen into staying with him towards the end of the episode by saying, Gwen, you're the only thing at this point keeping me off of the green. If you leave, I don't know what I'll become. I think that just proves that Harry is like his father, because if Harry was a genuine human being, he wouldn't have done that. I gave the quip rating a 9 out of 10. I gave the villain rating a 10 out of 10 because we find out that Norman is the Green Goblin and that we think he dies. I gave the quip rating a 9 out of 10 because it's Green Goblin and Peter. They just bounce right off of each other. I love it. It's amazing. I can't complain. No complaints here. Peter is destined to be alone. That's just a side note I put, because he broke up with Liz, but Gwen didn't break up with Harry, so now he has no one. He can't just go back to Liz and be like, let's be together. You can't, because you can't do that. We also find towards like the very, very end of the episode that Norman is alive under the name Roman. And I put this together, I kid you not, Norman, depending on how you spell it, could be Roman in reverse. It's an anagram, if you will, or whatever it's called when you reverse a name and it's the same thing. But I thought that was pretty cool. My final thoughts would be that when you put all the numbers together, I did it out of 130 for quipping and villain rating because it's out of 10. There's 13 episodes per season. Season 2 did phenomenally better than Season 1. Season 1 had an 88 an 88 out of 130 for quips and a 91 out of 130 for villain looks and villain rating. Season 2 had a 99 out of 130 for quips and a 105 out of 130 for villain rating. Season 2 really does improve on the characters developed throughout the seasons. I think we should have gotten Season 3 because I would have really loved it, and I really would have loved the vision that they originally had. It would have been great. Norman being the Green Goblin was something you expect, but the way they do it is amazing, using the chameleon and redirecting you in Season 1, using Harry. In my opinion, Peter should have stayed with Liz because I think both of them helped in their development throughout both seasons. Also, I think because of the dual identity that Peter is dealing with on a daily basis, he is destined to be alone, and that is a problem that he will always deal with throughout his years because he never wants to put loved ones in harm's way. Peter ends Season 2 being a senior in high school alone because he dumps Liz for Gwen, but Henry manipulates Gwen into staying with him, so he goes into college being a single man. And I think what Season 3 would have been was him meeting MJ at that college and them growing a relationship. But that's all I can speculate. I hope you guys check out this show based off my summaries, and I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. See you guys next time where I discuss my summaries and discussion on the Justice League animated show.